Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Connect Plus webinar series. It's called Win the Amenities Race, Connect Your Building with Customized Transportation Solutions. Today's webinar is titled Customized Transportation Information as an Amenity. My name is Justin Shore. I'm the moderator for today's panel. I'm a principal with Wells & Associates, and I lead our TDM planning practice. You may have seen some emails over the past couple of days from my colleague Courtney Menjivar, who leads our TDM operations practice. Oops, sorry. Before we jump into our panel today, we have a few housekeeping items that we wanted to go over with you. First is that all of our audience members, as you probably heard when you beeped in, are in listen-only modes, and that's so that our panelists can present without disruptions. But if you have any questions, you'll be able to enter them into the control panel on the right side of your screen under the questions section. But out of respect for our panelists, we ask that you try to hold your questions until the end of the presentation. We will have 10 to 15 minutes after the presentations are done for the audience to ask our panelists those questions, so there will be time to ask them. Another housekeeping item, all handouts are available for download in the control center under the handouts section. The webinar will be recorded, and a link to the recording will be made available to all registrants by the end of day tomorrow. There will be a survey also at the end of the webinar, but if for some reason your schedule does not permit you to stay until the end of the webinar, don't worry, we will send a link to the survey along with the recording. We just ask that you please take a minute to fill it out so we can learn how we can make these webinars as meaningful as possible to you and others at our future webinar topics. So this webinar series has been designed, as we mentioned, to talk about who's winning the amenities race. And it showcases examples of properties across the country that have figured out different creative ways to position themselves ahead of the pack by connecting their properties with transportation solutions. And in the process, a lot of them are finding that this is really enriching the value of their properties and assets. So it's been good for their ROI. Today, though, you may recall the phrase from the movie Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. Well, that may work with baseball parks and Hollywood movies, but when it comes to transportation amenities and access, tenants really need to be educated and reminded about their transportation choices. And this helps ensure that the tenant experience connecting your property is as seamless and positive as possible. During today's webinar, our focus is on how properties are winning new tenants and doing just that by providing customized transportation information as an amenity. So our panel is going to just explore questions about where is this transportation information being shared to help tenants? Why is the information considered an amenity at properties, especially in ones that are less connected environments? And how is this information being used by tenants at the properties that are providing it? So our panel is going to explore these questions from two perspectives. The first is the old school. And by old school, we mean proactively working one-on-one with tenants and taking a sincere interest in their transportation well-being. What we found is that smart owners and managers can figure out creative ways to deliver this customized travel planning assistance to their tenants, and their tenants are often pleasantly surprised that this is available to them and look at it as a real perk and an amenity. The other perspective we're looking at is new school, and new school means embracing technology for the benefit of commuters. In today's faster paced world, knowing the exact status of rush hour transit connections and other forms of transportation is like gold to busy professionals. And really, at the end of the day, that technology helps improve the quality of the tenant's commuter life. So we're going to start our panel with the old school perspective. And old school really doesn't mean old. It just means that it's a more traditional way of doing things. And that's with customized travel planning, as we mentioned, working one-on-one with folks. And providing that perspective today is Drew Cressman. Drew In his role as Vice President of Asset Management for HCP in their life sciences portfolio, oversees about 8 million square feet. He's responsible for all aspects of operations, including financial reporting, allocating maintenance capital, and addressing any tenant issues. Prior to joining HCP in 2014, Drew held property management positions with several third-party property management firms in Houston, Texas, and was responsible for operating in office, retail, and industrial property. So he really does understand how these TDM programs fit into day-to-day operations. Drew is a graduate from Penn State University with a BS in accounting, and certainly qualified to talk about everything in our panel today. So with that, I will turn the panel over to Drew to talk about old school perspective.
Thanks, Justin. So first I'll tell you a little bit about our company and who we are, and then we'll get into the commuter programs that we've implemented our properties. So you can see there that HCP is a real estate investment trust. We own primarily properties in the healthcare industry, about 27 million feet of medical office and life science, 46,000 senior housing units. We've been around for 32 years. And I think that tells you the story of HCP. You might wonder what what is the life science portfolio? So the tenants in our life science portfolio are biotech and technology companies. The biotechs are pharmaceutical, medical device. We have diagnostic labs. That portfolio is primarily based in California, in the Bay Area and San Diego. We're in Lexington, just outside of Boston. The majority of the Bay Area portfolio is in South San Francisco, which is a biotech cluster where Genentech is located. So that's an area with traffic congestion is a concern, getting to work is a challenge for people, and that's probably where we're going to spend most of our time today. So there you can see that we have decent occupancy in the portfolio, and a majority of our tenants are public or well-established, so larger companies. And we've been doing this stuff for 20 years. HCP also has a focus on sustainability. So it's a corporate initiative for us. If you're familiar with GRESB reporting or CDP, any of those, the investment in just reporting to those organizations is significant. So we're invested in doing that. And in addition, we've got some recognition. We were named a sector leader for 3 times with GRESB. We are named on the leadership band for CDP for 5 years. And then NAREIT, which is an industry organization not listed there, but we were named the healthcare leader in the light 8 different times. So focus on sustainability as part of the company. But you're here to hear us talk about commuter programs. So I want to talk a little bit about why they're important to us and then what we're doing. The why, so you can see jurisdictional requirements. So there are some requirements related to our properties where the local city has some requirements for us, but as important or more important is that, as I mentioned, commuting is a challenge and it's a congested area, hard to get to, and our companies, similar to HCP's focus on sustainability, they too are focused on finding other ways to get folks to work other than driving your car alone. So commuter programs are important to them. So what are the things we're doing? We're reducing trips, rideshare, carpool programs. We're helping people find different ways to work using shuttles, public transportation, so both public and private. And the way we accomplish that is living the old school way, is intentional managed commuter programs. So we are monitoring our progress annually. We are meeting with tenants to help them become aware of available programs. We're investing in the facilities to make alternate means of transportation easy. So that means having bike lockers and bike storage areas and showers and those kind of things. We're also doing promotions and events. So regularly we're having events with the tenants to continue to remind them of the programs that are available. So as a landlord and wanting to be successful, we want to be a place where tenants want to come and want to choose us as the landlord of choice. So we've been named as a best workplace for commuters site in each of these sites that are listed on the screen there. So that's 19 buildings, about 1.6 million square feet. So each of those are named best workplace for commuters sites, which means the landlord has a focus on making or assisting with alternate ways to get to work. Here's a slide that shows our progress at one of the properties. And so you can see that alternate transportation, we range anywhere from a little over 15% up to 40. And you see a dip in the middle there. So during the dip, what was going on was, the economy was having some challenges, as you all may remember. And also, there was a lot of turnover in the employee base, and that drove to some of those changes. So one of the reasons I think that's good to look at is it shows that we're doing an audit annually to determine what the number is. So we're monitoring our progress, and then we're addressing the change. So in the Bay Area, we use Elizabeth Hughes with TDM Consultants. So she's doing both these audits and doing the commuter events and working with tenants. So I think it's great that we came out of the dip and improved, and then also that for the last 5 years, we're better than 30% at our property there. So why, again, is this stuff important to us? Because our tenants who are, want to be companies where people want to work also, shouldn't be surprising to hear that the competition for employees in the Bay Area is aggressive, and there's a lot of large companies they're very well known, pulling in a lot of the high-tech talent. So the companies want to be recognized, and with our efforts to make our properties more attractive, we believe that we're helping ourselves by being a part of that progress. And that is what I've got to say. So passing it off to Ryan.
Actually, before we do, thank you. Let me just thank you, Drew, for that summary and for willing to be going with that terminology of old school. But again, old school really is just good old-fashioned one-on-one communication and working with individuals. So for our next slide, I just want to talk a little bit about the new school. And again, we mentioned that speaking from the perspective of the new school, we have a representative from Urban Transit Screen. Geez, that was a big mental blast from the past. Ryan with Transit Screen. Ryan, let me give you a brief update here and describe your background. As the co-founder of Transit Screen, a global information company based here in Washington, you guys help out millions of people in cities across North America and Europe and save time by providing real-time mobility at a glance. Transit Screen envisions cities of the future where single-occupancy vehicles, or SOVs, will be complemented by walking, bicycling, autonomous vehicles, and other sustainable forms of transportation. And Ryan is a busy guy. He's all over the country talking about this amazing technology that really helps convey information in a visually stimulating and concise way. So with that, Ryan, I will turn the panel back over to you. And Ryan, not sure if you're on mute, but if you are.
Great. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Sure can.
All right. So thank you to Wells and Justin for the opportunity. As Justin mentioned, I'm Ryan Croft, I'm co-founder here at Transit Screen. We're a 25-person technology firm based in Washington, D.C. And really, we build products that we think bridge the gap between real-time mobility and data and the real estate sector. So let's kick it off. Doesn't seem to be advancing.
Where you want to be, Ryan?
The slides don't seem to be advancing. Oh, there we go. One more. There we go. Okay. So really, if you think about Transit Screen, our core product that people might know us for the most is a live information display that you can look quickly at a glance at all your transportation options tied to a given location. Of course, that's multi-platform, so this information can be displayed in a lobby display or desktops and tablets, but also on mobile apps that we've developed. This location specifically on the screen that you see right now is in the Washington, D.C. area. So you're looking on the left side at buses and train information. It tells you where it's going, when it picks up, how many minutes to walk to get to that specific bus stop, trying to give you better context as to the overall transportation around there. In the middle and on the right, you can also see bike sharing services in real time, how many are available, how many open docks. So Virginia Square Metro has 5 bikes and plenty of open docks, whereas Central Library doesn't have any. And then car sharing services like Zipcar, Car2Go, we have a couple dozen around the country. And Uber, Lyft, and other ride sharing services are also on the platform, so you can see quickly how many minutes away for a given service, and then if it's surge pricing or not. Weather, time, and other branding information is also on there. This is updating in real time, and it's every 30 to 45 seconds. So as we sort of look at the bigger macro trends, I think that are impacting the way we live and the way we work, mobility, we could all agree, has changed more probably in the last 5 years than the last 100 years combined. It's staggering the amount of growth that bike share has undergone in the last year. It's grown 5x. We took 10 billion trips collectively in 2017, which is a staggering number. Ride-sharing services like Uber, Via, Lyft also grew very quickly, 4x in the last year. 20 billion trips globally were taken. And then, talk about old school and traditional industries, mass transit. It's also growing. 40 new metros came on board in the last 10 years, which is pretty exciting. And then you hear a lot in the press about autonomous vehicles, and some people might think they're really far in the future, but they're really not. There's 18 companies that are actively pursuing autonomous and self-driving technologies, and many of them are hitting the streets this year and beyond. So mobility is changing quickly. The other thing that's changing is consumer preferences of where to live. And if you ask, the United Nations did a study, by 2050, we expect 75% of the world to live in cities. And that's going to have a really massive impact on the way that people move and their real estate choices, where to live, where to work. We talk about smart cities a lot, but one of the things that we look at from a McKinsey study is the time that's spent waiting for transit is actually that you can quantify that amount, and $60 billion annually is lost. You often see these tied to traffic as well. How much time have people lost over the years just simply waiting in traffic? The same could be said for waiting in transit. So in terms of our footprint, we've been really fortunate in the last 3 years to see a tremendous amount of growth. We now reach 1,000 locations around 40 cities in 5 countries. It's pretty impactful to say that 1 million people walk by a transit screen every single day. And I think that speaks to really what the mission is, and it's behavior change, to give people information so they can make an educated choice, whether it's where they live or work. If they're on vacation or on a work trip, it's where they're staying. And we have a couple deployments in mass transit stations and spectaculars, which are more out in the public realm and outside of stadiums and arenas. So I want to talk about one specific case study, and really this could be any of the Fortune 500 companies. So a company like LinkedIn, where they've got offices all over the world, but particularly they've got some acute challenges. And if you think about a large campus or any large company for that matter, commute is often cited as the #1 reason why people leave a job. So that makes sense because your day is impacted immediately, because commuting is the first and actually the last impression you get of your workday. So if you have a long drive and it's really stressful in traffic, or if you walk 10 minutes to work, you're going to have a different sort of ethos or different vibe and philosophy when you are working. So that matters, and improving the employee experience is definitely a major trend that we're seeing with the Fortune 500 companies that we work with. And I think it really comes down to enhancing the employee experience. It's not just a TDM requirement that, oh, the city requires you to do this, or the county, or some governing body. I think it's just good business. So a lot of the Fortune 500s, I would say virtually all, run shuttles of some kind, be it a commuter shuttle or a last mile shuttle to try to get people between offices or from the subway stop to their home. And LinkedIn is no different. They do have pretty aggressive commute trip reduction goals, and they're all different based on where the offices are located. But I think LinkedIn is just a great microcosm for a lot of the other companies that are out there that are trying to solve this major problem. And we work with some of the biggest companies in the world, from Bloomberg and Discovery and General Electric and Grubhub. And no matter if you're an old school company like McDonald's or a new school company like Capital One or GE, or I'm sorry, Amazon, getting people to and from work is a common challenge, and trying to come up with solutions is something that everyone is really reaching for. So we really see our product as one of many tools in a toolkit for a facilities manager or a large employer. And really it's with an overall goal of reducing congestion, reducing overall demand for parking, and then to meet sustainability goals where folks have that as a corporate goal.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. I think the story of Transit Screen is an amazing one, and certainly, as you have in your next slide, I know you guys are moving toward not just having it on screens, but keeping it in your hand as well. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add on that before we jump into the Q&A.
Yeah, and I'll just close by saying, we started as a transportation display company, but very quickly you realize we want to be wherever someone is looking, and if you're walking through a lobby and that's a location where it's best to consume the information, we'll be there. But we've developed now a mobile app in both the App Store and iOS and Android. So it can be an extension that anyone's on the go if they're up on the 36th floor or they're around the corner and they want to use this information over time. For one, they can use it today, and corporations are using it using our mobile app. But what's really exciting is that what we've developed is a new technology, an extension of this app where it'll be both sides of a commute, and something that we're looking to roll out in the summertime. So again, thank you very much for having me, and looking forward to Q&A.
That's great, Ryan. Thanks again. And what I think we love about Transit Screen, and certainly we work with you guys in a lot of the locations where we are, is that it's, first step is certainly letting people know what their choices are. And then once they've figured out what their choices are, what the best option is, making sure they're aware of real time, what's going on with that option. And, maybe I should sit and wait and check another email or write another report before I head out because traffic's bad or my bus is delayed or whatever it is. And having that information is really powerful. So thanks again, Ryan. And at this point, before we jump into our Q&A, just wanted to remind everybody that the handouts, in the handout section of the panel to the right of your screen, we have a copy of today's slide deck that's available for download. So certainly there will be the recording and you get to hear the Q&A, but that's included as well. As we wait for these questions to file in, Drew, I wanted to start with one that, I've had on my mind, which is, you mentioned how your tenants view your commuter program and the customized assistance you provide them, that one-on-one, as a key feature for your San Francisco Bay Area employment sites. But based on your experience with your Britannia properties in South San Francisco, would you consider providing tenants this sort of one-on-one assistance to solve their employee commuter issues at other locations in your portfolio, either now or in the future? And I know you guys are all over the country, so more just like a generic question when you're in other markets.
Yeah, so absolutely. We're constantly reevaluating how we provide service in all different levels, and commuter programs are one of those. So we're constantly looking at different places that we can deliver service better. So yes, we consider them. There's some programs down in San Diego today, and yes, keep looking for ways we can help folks.
That's great, Drew. Ryan, again, you guys were presenting as new school, but obviously you work in a lot of contexts where there's old school technology as well. And looking at it more broadly, you talked about some Fortune 500 companies, but with non-Fortune 500 companies, how do you see real-time information on the screen synergizing with that sort of personalized assistance that Drew talked about providing his tenants as an amenity?
Yeah, I don't think it's just leading edge technology companies who are looking to improve a commute. You have, older technology companies, hardware companies, you have 100-year-old corporations and insurance companies that have turned to us and asked, hey, can we talk about using some form of your product in what we do? So I think it's just a really common challenge that anyone who operates a large organization realizes, that simply there's not enough space to park all the cars, and people this day and age are more of an on-demand mind, and they want to be able to have the time that they need in their commute to get things done. And sitting in a car and maybe in a stressful environment, if you're in traffic, is maybe not the most efficient way to do it. So I think it goes beyond whether it's a new company, old company, very big or mid-size. All companies kind of share this common challenge, and we recognize that we're one of many solutions, but we're all working towards a common goal.
Makes total sense. Thank you, Ryan. Ryan, we had a couple of other questions come in from our audience. One is about the mobile platform that you ended with. And the question is, how will that work? Is that free, or do you register if your property has a transit screen contract? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the mobile experience is something that we've built. It's really a B2B mobile app. So the companies that we work with on a real estate side, or the Fortune 500s of the world, will purchase a license for a building, and then we provide that full solution, including the building license and the mobile app together. Over time, obviously, there will be different applications, the way that we could roll it out, but for the time being, it's really tied to a specific building and to a specific company, either the apartment or the commercial office that we're contracted with.
Great, thank you. That's exciting. Certainly a value-added feature. Drew, question for you. Again, you showed how you measure the mode split in your chart, where you showed the increase in participation of, non-drive alone options at your Britannia properties. Are there other ways that you're able to measure sort of the less quantifiable, maybe just the subjective feelings your tenants have about the program? And if so, how do you understand what your tenants are feeling about that service? How do you get that kind of feedback, and what are they saying in general?
That's also a good question. So certainly the metrics give you a pretty clear window into how we're progressing overall. I guess the way that I keep up with the folks in our buildings and how well we're doing is indeed the old school way, sitting down and talking to them. So it's showing up every once in a while, knocking on the door and saying, how are we doing? And running through a list of issues they've got. And commuting and access is regularly on the list. And so where we can, we continue to tweak the program.
Excellent. Well, we are at the end of our 30-minute Express webinar time frame. Before we depart, I'd like to thank both Drew and Ryan for the time that you spent preparing for today, sharing your thoughts with us, sharing your experience as it relates to transportation amenities at various real estate contexts from different perspectives. And it's always exciting to hear that it's not just, our experience, that folks are doing these types of things in environments because it's the right thing to do for their tenants. And there's a real ROI, but there's different ways to go about it. And you guys shared some great angles on, again, both traditional one-on-one communication, old school with new technology, and the combination we think is really the way to go to affect transportation behavior change and give people more choices. So before we close out, just want to remind folks that this is part of a larger webinar series. We have 2 remaining panels coming up in the next couple of months. The next panel will be on public space programming, and then we'll have one on wayfinding. Again, all these are elements that we find are becoming transportation-related amenities that make buildings a little more competitive in the market and set them apart from the competition. So with that, I want to thank our audience for joining us today. If you have questions, you can reach some of our subject matter experts that are in the presentation. Please feel free to download the slides, and we'll look forward to having you join us at our next webinar. I hope you all have a great day. Happy Wednesday.
Thanks, Justin.